Hey everyone, this is Julie, the cancer dietitian. Just as a reminder about who I am a registered dietitian and a board-certified specialist in oncology nutrition. I've been practicing oncology nutrition for almost 15 years now, and I'm the creator of CancerDietitian.com and the wellness director for Cancer Services Incorporated in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This podcast is for anyone interested in cancer and nutrition and evidence-based information. Today's topic is kind of a trio. It's superfoods, supplements, and CBD. It might seem like a strange combination, but I find that sales tactics and marketing efforts for all three of these are pretty similar. They play on some misunderstandings that most people have about nutrition, how our bodies work, and what the current evidence shows. To be honest, this topic was just going to be about the idea of superfoods because it's one of what I consider the top 5 myths that superfoods can somehow prevent cancer or cure cancer. But with all of the CBD craziness going on, I had an oncologist almost beg me to talk about CBD on the Cancer Dietitian podcast. So I decided to go ahead and throw it in with this one. And supplements really fit pretty well with the superfoods topic. So we are going to get right into it. First of all, I like to give people the bottom line right up front so that if you don't want to listen to all the details, you don't have to. This is what I call the myth. There is a myth that superfoods prevent or cure cancer. The fact is that there's no such thing as a superfood. It's a marketing term used to sell products and has no scientific basis. It's a gross oversimplification to say that any one food on its own could have a major influence over your chance of developing cancer. So just as a side note, that means that there's not really any one food that causes cancer. I think we tend to simplify or oversimplify certain foods when it's really more about our dietary patterns that make the biggest difference. So when it comes to superfoods, I think it's important to understand that people or companies who claim to sell superfoods want you to believe that there's something kind of magical in certain food items that will protect or cure your body of disease. You've probably heard the claims at some point. It's a great sales tactic to say that, well, blueberries are so high in antioxidants, and so you should be buying blueberry extract right and left. I guess elderberries are kind of the hot thing right now. But the truth is that one food on its own is not going to cure a disease, whether it's the flu or cancer or anything else. It just doesn't work that way in our bodies. But that term superfood works as a sales tactic. That should be kind of a red flag if somebody's using that word. I prefer to steer people towards the idea of a super diet. I kind of started using that term because there's no such thing as a superfood, but you could have a super diet, which is more about your pattern of eating and what types of foods you eat the most often. And that's what's really the most important, the frequency of the foods that you eat. Which ones do you eat the most often? And then if you have ones that maybe aren't the most nutritious foods, but you really enjoy them, are you having them in the appropriate type of moderation? So research shows that what we eat and drink and how physically active we are can help reduce risk of cancer overall. Certainly there's no guarantees, but we think that, maybe 30 or 40% of cancers could be reduced if people ate healthy and were physically active. And of course, that's just cancer, not to mention all the other ways that eating healthy and being physically active are a benefit to our mental health, other disease risks, and just overall our well-being. We feel better when we treat our bodies well. It's not going to make a big difference to just focus on one food. It's the combination of foods and beverages along with daily physical activity that make choices to help us minimize our exposure to carcinogens and maximize our health. So how do you make your diet a super diet? First of all, I'm going to remind you that a diet is not something that you go on and off. I define a diet just simply as what you eat. So we all have a diet. My dog has a diet. It's what we choose to eat. That's all it is. So in order to make a super diet, you want to be choosing foods and beverages that are particularly nutritious. So that's foods and drinks that have lots of plant nutrients in them, like antioxidants, be full of vitamins and minerals and fiber, because all those things are really good for us. And of course, have a nice balance of the major nutrients, which is water, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So we've talked some about carbs in the sugar episode that I did, which is my first one. Carbs are good for you. The types of carbs that you eat and and how much you eat of them is what we want to kind of focus on. So we want you to include lots of nutritious foods in order to make your diet a super diet. Basically, that means lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, other plant foods like plant proteins, beans, nuts, seeds, soy foods, all things that really give your body protein, they give your body healthy carbohydrates, and they come packaged all together with these other plant nutrients like antioxidants. They give you vitamins and minerals, all those things. The other thing that I would focus on for a super diet is getting what we consider to be healthy fats, nuts, fish like salmon, tuna. And then when we talk about beverages, I would consider coffee and tea in minimally processed versions or doesn't have a lot of additives in it. So if you think about the difference between black coffee, which is a plant, the coffee bean, which is roasted and ground and brewed into the water, comes from a plant, it's good for you. You can get decaf, you can get regular. I think that the moderation recommendation is up to 4 cups a day is perfectly fine. I kind of draw the line if you're going to go into where you have 4 pumps of syrup and whole milk and whipped cream on top of your coffee, and that's more of a dessert than it is a healthy beverage. So things like unsweet tea, unsweetened coffee, water that you might squeeze lemons or infuse cucumbers or whatever into would be great beverage choices. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about supplements. I love to point out to people that we actually have an evidence-based recommendation regarding supplements, and you're not going to believe this, but it comes from the American Institute for Cancer Research, which is a great organization. They're very evidence-based. They have super smart people, scientists that come together and review all the research that's ever been done on nutrition, physical activity, cancer. They rank the evidence, and they come out with evidence-based recommendations. And their current evidence-based recommendation around supplements is flat out, do not use supplements for cancer prevention. The bottom line is that supplements can help treat a condition. So, if you have a low level of something, that can be helpful. However, they have not been proven to reduce risk of cancer. And so if somebody is thinking, oh, I'm going to take a supplement because it's antioxidants and it's supposed to prevent cancer, that's just flat out not true. And we have some evidence proving that supplements may not be good for you. And I think that the harm that they can do is more around how you think about your diet, because we want you to aim to meet your nutritional needs through your diet alone. And you don't really have a need for a nutrition supplement, most people. And what happens sometimes is that people think, well, maybe I don't eat so healthy or I don't feel like eating healthy, and so I'm just going to take a supplement just to make up for it. And the evidence points to that you cannot make up for a junky diet by taking supplements. So most people actually don't need them. The definition of a supplement is it could be vitamins, minerals, herbs, enzymes, amino acids, antioxidants, other substances. So they're manufactured and sold in the form of pills, capsules, tablets, powders, and sometimes drinks or energy bars. And really, there's very little regulation on the supplement industry. And so part of the potential harm is that some of them can be contaminated with dangerous substances, and no one's really checking back to make sure that they're safe. It's different from how pharmaceutical pills are produced. Pharmaceuticals have to go through extensive clinical trials, and then there's a process for how they're made, and it's regulated, versus supplements don't have to go through any clinical trials. They can pretty much put anything in a pill, stick it on a shelf, sell it, and nobody regulates that. So they're not double checking to see what's in it. So I'm a little cautious just from a safety standpoint, not even to mention whether it's going to help someone or not. The time that you might actually need a supplement is if you are at what we would consider a moderate or high risk group. Pregnant women who have an increased need for folic acid, we might have them on, a B vitamin. A lot of pregnant women take prenatal vitamin. Some people over the age of 50 might have trouble absorbing vitamin B12, so they might need to get shots or have sublingual B12. But to me, what I find is that most people, if you have a good relationship with your doctor, you should be able to discuss with them whether you need to take a supplement or not. And really, my preference is that somebody is not taking a nutritional supplement unless they have a documented need for it. I, in the past, have had low iron. I've had an iron panel checked, and it shows that my iron is low, which means I need supplements to bring it back up, and then I might be able to maintain a healthy level with my food intake. But once it's low, I'm going to need a supplement to bring it back up. I'm not just taking that supplement out of the blue. I'm monitoring every 3 months what my lab values are. Once my lab values are back up where we want it, I might cut back on the amount of supplement I'm taking or take it less frequently, or even just try to maintain it with a regular healthy diet. Those are the things that we want to be sure of. I don't think people should be taking supplements just because, without having some way of monitoring if it's a benefit to them or not. The other thing to point out is that, with supplements, it really shouldn't be something you have to take forever. It should be something where maybe you're solving a problem, or it might be while you're in treatment and you're not eating as well. Your doctor might want you to take a multivitamin to kind of make up for that. Or if you're using nutrition supplement drinks like Boost or Ensure, or if you're on a tube feeding, those things essentially they have the nutrients already supplemented in them, so you wouldn't need to take more on top of it. So that's my take on supplements. Multivitamins are another type of supplement that people often take. If you want to take a multivitamin, I think that's perfectly fine. I would try to not take a very high amount of it. So if you're looking at the multivitamin and you're evaluating the percentages on the back and you're thinking, well, let me just see, if I could top off my nutrition. I eat pretty healthy, but maybe this will just kind of top off the nutrients that I need. It really should not be over 100% or significantly over that on any of the multivitamins that you choose. And it should also not cost you an arm and a leg. So another red flag when you're buying multivitamins or supplements is the cost. If a multivitamin is costing you more than $5 or $10 a month, it is not worth it. I listened to a educational program on multivitamins that the Center for Science and the Public Interest did a couple of years ago. It was really interesting, but their point was that if you buy Centrum, which is just kind of a standard multivitamin, I'm not promoting them or anything, but it was just an example. It costs about $2 a month for their daily supply. There are some people who promote a certain brand of supplement, and they often sell it in a multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme type of situation. And what we see is that they typically charge more like $40 or $80 a month, and that's just not necessary. So I would encourage you to really pay attention to the cost and the percentage of the nutrients that are in your multivitamin. Something that people ask me about multivitamins is they say, well, is absorption a problem with synthetic nutrition or synthetic nutrients that you get in a pill? I'm sure that many of you have seen advertisements on TV where someone puts a pill in water and they're like, oh, this doesn't get absorbed. And then what they do is go on to show how their product, when they use their product, it dissolves in water and it's superior because of that. If you missed my episode on alkaline water, this is a good point to kind of listen to about the digestive process in that podcast. But I just want to remind you, your stomach is not made of water. It is made of really strong stomach acid. So after your food or a supplement pill leaves your mouth and it goes into your stomach, it's going to be sitting in this very acidic situation, not water, very acidic kind of situation in your stomach. And then it goes through a very complex digestive process. So trying to make people think that somehow the digestive process is comparative to a glass of water is completely ridiculous. So consumerlabs.com actually did some testing for dissolving and absorbing multivitamins and found that all but one dissolved properly in a way that would be perfectly well absorbed by the human body. They even found that the dollar store brand showed good absorption, and most multivitamin companies use synthetic vitamins. If you want to consider the evidence, I would tell you that, most of the vitamins that you would get at a typical grocery store are probably going to be perfectly fine and absorbed just fine. Do multivitamins expire? I mean, they have to have expiration dates because that's just part of the law, but the biggest risk after expiration is that it might have a little bit lose some of its nutrients breaking down. Common sense says don't buy it expired and then try to use them up before the date. But if I have taken pills after the date, because I don't think it's worth throwing away. Should I take nutrients in an individual pill instead of a multivitamin? Again, I think it's, if you're going for a multivitamin, you're looking at getting 17 or so different nutrients in one pill. I wouldn't want to take 17 different pills. So to me, that's just a hit. I personally don't take a multivitamin because I don't think it's necessary, and I want to take just what I absolutely need and then get my other nutrients from food as my body is designed. That's just my take, that if you want to take a multivitamin, it's perfectly fine. I wouldn't get a super high dose. You could maybe take one every other day. I don't think you need to take it all in different pills. But if you don't take one, I think that's also a perfectly fine choice. That is it from that standpoint. So now I'm going to move on and talk just briefly about CBD. This is not going to be comprehensive coverage regarding CBD, but I think a lot of people, they kind of just want the down and dirty. Let's talk about CBD. Most of us live in states where marijuana is not legal. And so what I'm going to talk about mainly is CBD oil, because at least around me, there's shops popping up right and left selling CBD. And so mostly it's in oil form. Marijuana and hemp are both varieties of the cannabis plant. Both contain CBD and THC, which are the two most commonly known active ingredients of marijuana. So the main difference is that the hemp plant has a lot less THC than a typical marijuana plant. And unlike THC, the CBD is not a psychoactive agent. So there's less possibility it's going to cause the same mental confusion that, we typically associate with a marijuana. That's how it's legal. Essentially, that's why CBD is legal in certain states, although I think the legality of it is actually up for debate. But because it doesn't have the active THC, that's how they're getting around it. So is there any truth to the claims that CBD oil can cure cancer? No. Currently, there's no evidence that CBD oil can cure cancer. So if someone's taking it for that reason, I think they're wasting their time and their money. Is there anything else that CBD oil can do to alleviate symptoms of cancer or the side effects of cancer? Difficult to say if CBD oil can alleviate any symptoms or treatment side effects because there's not many studies. They're a little bit mixed. They're just weren't very well designed and didn't have many people involved in them. So it's hard to get good evidence out of that. There have been reports that cannabinoids like THC and CBD may be helpful for nausea, poor appetite type things, neuropathy, anxiety, but we don't have evidence. And synthetic cannabinoids, like some of the pills that are prescribed, have been approved for use with chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, but they have not been shown to be any better than any of the other anti-nausea medicines. Essentially, if you think that you want to use things like THC or CBD for your nausea, you really ought to be either one, getting prescription strength versions of it, not fly-by-night over-the-counter shops where there's no standards on the quality of the product. I would go for the prescription strength kind, and then also realize that the data don't show that they're any better than typical conventional anti-nausea medicines. Currently, no CBD oil derived products have been approved by the FDA to treat cancer or side effects caused by its treatment. So if you're looking at evidence-based guidelines, there's no evidence right now showing that it's a benefit and it's not been approved for that use. Have any products using CBD oil been approved by the FDA to treat anything? Yes, pretty much only in the case of epilepsy. 2 different types of epileptic syndromes where there is a product that is approved by the FDA for that particular use, but it has nothing to do with cancer. Are there any dangers of using CBD oil? Because I know a lot of people are feeling like, well, geez, it seems like everyone's trying it. So, is there any downside to it? I would say, and I got a lot of this information from MD Anderson Cancer Center, actually. They point out 3 of the biggest concerns are quality, cleanliness, and regulation. And so all drugs and dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA. But as long as CBD is not marketed as a medicine or a dietary supplement, producers can actually even get around that policy. So right now, essentially, the CBD oil industry is completely unregulated. It's very difficult to know how much CBD or how much THC is really in a product someone's selling you. You have to just believe them. And remember, they're a salesperson, so they're not like they have a conflict of interest. They want your money. Certain hemp CBD products have been found to contain significantly less CBD or more THC than they actually advertise. In terms of purity, THC and CBD are both extracted from hemp and marijuana using essentially the same process, but trace amounts of THC could still end up in CBD oil, and that's not really what most people want, because if the THC is at a high enough concentration, then it can produce those psychoactive effects. Maybe some people are looking for that, but I think a lot of people, especially in cancer treatment, are dealing with enough they don't want to add that on top of it. Secondly, if a lab produces both CBD and THC products, there can be cross-contamination, which is a possibility, and then the plant itself might have higher levels of THC than expected. The plant that's actually grown. Growing plants is a science, but it's not a hard science. So some things just change with different products. There have been a few reports of people getting infections after using CBD and cannabis products, which is concerning for people who are immune compromised, like a lot of our cancer patients. And then studies on a certain CBD manufacturer, so they looked at one particular manufacturer, showed its products were contaminated with a chemical known as 5-FADB, which mimics THC and is classified by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration as illegal. So there is that concern of that contamination that's really very difficult to control for. Other sorts of substances have been found in CBD products as well, such as an ingredient in cough medicine, heavy metals, pesticide, and mold found in CBD products. It is really difficult for this to be regulated and for you to actually know what you're getting when you buy it. I heard a pharmacist she referred to it as basically the Wild West. You might think that there's some sort of controls on this industry, but right now there's absolutely none. What we're looking at is it's very risky, is what I would say. Are there any side effects? It can affect liver function. It can inhibit certain enzymes that are responsible for the metabolism of drugs, especially some chemotherapy drugs. So you want to make sure that your doctor knows or your pharmacist knows so that they can make sure there's no interactions with your medication. It's also, it's not a medicine. And currently it has this sort of complex legal status. Technically at the national level, any product of marijuana, including CBD, is still illegal. Obviously, they're not cracking down on that very much. What I would tell you is one of the most important things that you need to know is that we don't know much right now, that there's a lot of people making claims that they have no evidence for whatsoever. So know that going in. Make sure that your medical team knows if you want to try it or that if you are using it so that you can make sure it doesn't interact with your current medications, or they can monitor for any, potential side effects that you might need to pay attention to. I'd think hard about what it's going to be doing for you, just like if you're going to be using a nutrition supplement or an herbal. If you think it's supposed to help with a certain symptom, then you need to be monitoring your symptom and seeing if there's some kind of way you can measure whether it's getting better or not. Otherwise, you're just, you could just be wasting your money that you could spend on something else. So that covers those topics for today. I know it's a lot to cover in a little bit of time, but hopefully it kind of gave you the high level evidence as far as what we do know. I thank you for listening. I always love to hear your feedback, suggestions for future topics. I believe that wraps up all the myths that I wanted to cover. So actually, my next podcast will probably be my favorite because I love to give people the information around what they should be eating and what they could be including more of in their day that will help promote their health and well-being. So that is our next topic. It's going to be my survivor diet recommendations. You can always find me over at cancerdietitian.com and on social media. I'm at Cancer Dietitian on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be sure to share this episode with your friends. Encourage them to subscribe to the Cancer Dietitian podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and I will talk with you later.